Imagine two people standing in the same room, speaking the same language, yet somehow completely missing each other's meaning. This is the frustrating reality for many couples caught in the crossfire of clashing attachment styles. Without realizing it, our earliest experiences of love and safety, or the lack thereof, wire our brains to expect certain patterns in relationships. For those with an avoidant attachment style, closeness can feel like a trap rather than a comfort. They might pride themselves on being self sufficient, logical, or low maintenance. But beneath that independence often lies a quiet fear. If I let someone in, they'll eventually let me down. The turning point comes when both partners begin to see their struggles not as personal failings, but as echoes of old survival strategies. Avoidant individuals, in particular, face a crucial revelation. Their retreat into emotional distance isn't a choice in the way they might think. It's an automatic defense, carved into their nervous system by years of unmet needs. Maybe their caregivers were dismissive, inconsistent, or simply emotionally absent, teaching them early on that relying on others leads to disappointment. So they learn to rely only on themselves. But here's the paradox. What once protected them now isolates them. The very walls they built to feel safe end up keeping out the love they secretly crave. Healing begins not with a dramatic leap into vulnerability, but with a simple, sobering recognition. My way of loving was shaped by what I lacked, not just who I am. When avoidant partners start to trace their withdrawal back to its roots, and when their loved ones begin to see their reactions through this lens, conflicts that once felt unsolvable suddenly have a roadmap. The first step isn't about changing overnight. It's about understanding that the distance between two people isn't always measured in space, but in unspoken fears. And the bravest thing an avoidant can do isn't to pretend they don't need connection. It's to admit, even just to themselves, that they do. Picture a child reaching out for comfort after scraping their knee, only to be met with a dismissive wave or an exasperated sigh. Now imagine this happening not just once, but over and over. Each time they seek connection, they're met with indifference, impatience, or outright rejection. This is the emotional crucible where avoidant attachment is forged. Children are hardwired to seek safety in their caregivers, but when those caregivers are emotionally unavailable, whether due to their own struggles, lack of awareness, or even well-intentioned but misguided parenting, the child faces an impossible dilemma. How do I get my needs met when the very people who should comfort me make me feel like a burden? The solution they stumble upon is both brilliant and heartbreaking. They stop asking. Over time, these children become masters of self-sufficiency. They learn to swallow their tears, quiet their fears, and navigate the world alone. The message they internalize isn't just, I can't depend on others. It's deeper and more damaging. My needs make me unlovable. This belief follows them into adulthood, where it manifests as what looks like fierce independence but is actually emotional self-preservation. The tragedy is that this survival strategy works, until it doesn't. As adults, avoidant individuals often excel at surface-level relationships while panicking at true intimacy. They might pride themselves on not being needy, not realizing that their fear of dependence stems from childhood wounds rather than strength. Every time they pull away from a partner's touch, dismiss their own feelings as irrational, or rationalize their way out of vulnerability, they're not making a conscious choice. They're following an old, deeply ingrained script written when they were too young to understand they deserved better. The path to healing begins with recognizing this script for what it is. Not a personal failing, but a child's ingenious adaptation to emotional neglect. That little boy or girl who learned to go it alone did what they had to survive. But the adult they've become now has the power to write a new story, one where needing others isn't dangerous but profoundly human. Imagine building an invisible fortress around your heart, one so well constructed that even you forget it's there. This is the psychological masterpiece of the avoidant attachment style. A sophisticated defense system designed to keep pain out, but which unintentionally locks love out too. Underneath that calm, collected exterior pulses a quiet terror of vulnerability, governed by unconscious mantras that play on repeat. I'm unlovable at my core. If I let someone matter, they'll inevitably let me down. Showing neediness will only push people away. These aren't conscious choices, but survival programs installed in childhood, back when needing comfort was met with rejection, or when emotions were treated as inconveniences. So the avoidant adult becomes an emotional Houdini, mastering escape acts from intimacy before they can get hurt. They armor up in ways society often praises: the workaholic who's so dedicated, the intellectual who doesn't do messy feelings, the free spirit who doesn't do labels. Their weapons of choice? Hyper independence. I'll do everything myself. Emotional minimization. It's not a big deal. And strategic withdrawal. I need space, indefinitely. The cruel irony? These defenses work perfectly. Too perfectly. That career success numbs the loneliness. Until 2 a.m. when the empty bed echoes. That rationalization quiets relationship fears. Until partners stop trying to reach through the walls. What began as brilliant childhood adaptations become adult prisons, where the avoidant sits alone holding the key, wondering why connection feels so dangerous. The turning point comes when they realize the armor didn't just protect their heart, it atrophied it. Those buried beliefs aren't truths, but ancient survival tactics from a time when love felt conditional. And the bravest thing they can do isn't staying safe in their fortress, but testing the terrifying hypothesis that maybe, just maybe, they could be loved not in spite of their needs, but because of them. The avoidant's greatest illusion is that they've mastered their emotions by ignoring them. They wear their low-maintenance label like a badge of honor, congratulating themselves for not being needy like others. But the human psyche doesn't work that way. Emotions buried alive never die. They simply mutate. What begins as disciplined self-control slowly morphs into a silent civil war within. That promotion you celebrated without sharing? It festers as midnight insomnia. The argument you logically dismissed? It reappears as unexplained road rage. The childhood tears you learned to swallow? They leak out as chronic migraines or mysterious digestive issues. Your body becomes a pressure cooker of unprocessed feelings, with stress hormones flooding your system like a toxin with no release valve. The cruelest twist? Many avoidants become overachievers precisely because their success serves as the ultimate emotional anesthetic. If you're the reliable one, the accomplished one, the one who never asks for help, surely then you'll be loved. Except no amount of external validation can fill the internal void where emotional connection should be. You stack up achievements like sandbags against a flood of unmet needs, not realizing you're building your own emotional levee, one that will inevitably break. The body always wins this battle. That tightness in your chest during vulnerable moments isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Your physiology is sounding the alarm. This isn't sustainable. The very suppression you pride yourself on is quite literally making you sick. And the healing begins with a terrifying but liberating admission. Being low maintenance was never strength. It was just another survival strategy that stopped working long ago. That eye roll, the abrupt subject change, the cold, clipped "I'm fine" when clearly they're not. To the outside world, an avoidance defensiveness reads as indifference. But behind that steel wall pulses something far more vulnerable: sheer terror. When conflict arises, it's not the disagreement itself that wounds them, but what it represents. An excruciating echo of childhood moments when their needs were met with irritation or abandonment. For the avoidant, criticism isn't just feedback. It's a full-body alarm screaming, "Danger." Their defensiveness isn't a choice, but a physiological reaction wired into their nervous system. That partner asking, "Can we talk about last night?" might as well be holding a live wire to their chest. Because in their world, being wrong isn't about making a mistake. It's catastrophic proof of their worst fear. "See, I'm fundamentally broken, and now you'll leave too." What looks like stonewalling is actually a desperate survival tactic. While anxious partners chase resolution to soothe their attachment wounds, avoidants flee emotional engagement to soothe theirs. The tragedy? Both are using opposite strategies to answer the same desperate question: am I still loved when I'm imperfect? The healing begins when we recognize defensiveness not as a character flaw, but as a trauma response. A scared child masquerading as an aloof adult. When an avoidant snaps whatever or retreats into silence, they're not rejecting you. They're bracing for the rejection they're certain is coming. The breakthrough comes when someone stays, not demanding they drop their armor, but gently acknowledging how heavy it must be to carry all the time. Imagine two dancers perpetually out of sync, one surging forward just as the other leaps back. This is the tragic choreography of anxious avoidant relationships, a heartbreaking tango where both partners keep stepping on each other's deepest wounds without realizing it. The cycle begins innocently enough. The anxious partner, sensing emotional distance, reaches for reassurance. A text, a touch, "Are we okay?" For them, connection is oxygen, and any hesitation from their partner feels like suffocation. But to the avoidant, this very reach for closeness registers as an overwhelming demand. Their nervous system screams, danger. And they do what they've always done, retreat into the safety of distance. Here's where the dance turns destructive. The anxious partner, now interpreting withdrawal as impending abandonment, redoubles their efforts. More texts, more questions, more urgency. Each attempt to close the gap only sends the avoidant scrambling further away, until both find themselves trapped in a feedback loop of pursuit and withdrawal. The anxious partner becomes increasingly desperate, the avoidant increasingly detached, both convinced the other holds the key to their pain, when in reality they're each reacting to childhood ghosts. The cruel irony? Both are experiencing the same core fear of abandonment. They're just expressing it in opposite ways. The anxious partners, "don't leave me," and the avoidance, "I need space," are actually two sides of the same coin. I'm terrified of being hurt. Breaking free requires both partners to step out of their instinctive roles. The anxious partner must learn the revolutionary act of self-soothing, discovering they can survive temporary distance without catastrophe. The avoidant must practice the equally radical act of leaning in, learning that discomfort doesn't equal danger. It's not about changing who they are, but about creating new steps to their dance. Ones where coming together doesn't feel like surrender, and space doesn't feel like rejection. The healing begins when they realize they're not enemies, but wounded allies. The very behaviors that frustrate them and each other are mirrors of their own unmet needs. For the anxious partner, the need to feel secure alone. For the avoidant, the courage to be securely held. Picture this. You're walking across a frozen lake with someone you trust. Suddenly, the ice beneath you cracks unexpectedly, not because you're too heavy, but because your partner keeps shifting their weight unpredictably. This is what happens when avoidant behaviors enter even the most secure relationships. That once solid ground of connection begins fracturing under the strain of mixed signals and emotional withdrawal. The human nervous system is exquisitely tuned to consistency. We're biologically programmed to read irregular affection as danger. When an avoidant partner disappears after intimacy, responds to bids for connection with silence, or serves up affection in unpredictable bursts, it triggers an ancient alarm. This person might abandon you. Suddenly, even the most self-assured partner finds themselves in unfamiliar territory, checking their phone too often, overanalyzing texts, feeling that gnawing pit of anxiety they've never experienced before. This isn't weakness, it's neuroscience. Our attachment systems don't discriminate between "I need space" and "I'm leaving forever." To the primal brain, inconsistency reads as threat, activating the same stress response our ancestors felt when tribe members wandered too far from camp. The cruel paradox? The avoidance attempts to self-protect, withdrawal, delayed responses, often create the very abandonment fears they dread in their partner. Imagine being handed a complex machine to operate, except no one showed you where the on button was. This is how many avoidants approach relationships, armed with brilliant minds and capable hands, but missing fundamental emotional tools. Their childhood manuals skipped crucial chapters. How to fight fair, without freezing or fleeing. How to say, "I'm scared," instead of "I'm fine." How to stay present, when every fiber screams to run. Without these skills, relationships inevitably flatline into roommate syndrome. Two people sharing space but not souls, talking logistics but not longings. The avoidance survival strategy of silence becomes the very thing that starves the connection they secretly crave. The breakthrough comes through safe honesty, not dramatic confessions, but small, deliberate acts of vulnerability. I need a break, but I'll be back in an hour, instead of ghosting. This conversation scares me, instead of shutting down. I miss you, without immediately retreating. Like any skill, emotional fluency feels awkward at first. The avoidant must learn that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the ultimate strength. That staying present during discomfort won't destroy them, it will finally set them free. And that the walls they built to keep pain out were also keeping their deepest healing at bay. The journey begins with a simple but terrifying question. What if the safety I've been seeking wasn't in distance, but in learning how to be close? Relationships aren't solo performances. They're duets where both partners must learn each other's rhythms. For the anxious partner, healing means replacing protest behaviors. You're always distant, with clear, non-accusatory bids for connection. When you take space without telling me, I imagine the worst. Could we create a way to check in? It's about discovering that their worth isn't contingent on constant reassurance, that they can self-soothe without abandoning their needs. For the avoidant partner, growth looks like staying present when every instinct screams to bolt. It's practicing the alien concept that listening without fixing, I hear this is hard for you, can be more powerful than withdrawing. That saying, I need time to process, differs radically from stonewalling. One builds trust, the other erodes it. Most terrifyingly, they must learn that vulnerability isn't a trapdoor that will drop them into emotional freefall, but a bridge to the connection they've always wanted but feared they didn't deserve. Love isn't built in grand gestures, but in the accumulation of micro moments. The morning coffee made just how they like it. The hand squeeze during a stressful moment. The thinking of you text that arrives without prompting. Science confirms what hearts have always known. It takes 15 positive interactions to repair one negative one. For avoidance, this math is revolutionary. It means they don't have to become someone else overnight, just slightly more present, more often. The magic lies in consistency, not intensity. A daily 2-minute check-in creates more security than a weekend getaway followed by weeks of silence. A simple, I appreciate you, lands deeper than occasional grand declarations. These small acts rewire the nervous system's expectations, teaching both partners that closeness can be safe, that needs won't be punished, that love isn't a roller coaster but a steady flame. Healing begins when the avoidant realizes their fortress has become their cage, that the freedom they truly crave isn't from love, but within it. And when both partners understand, the goal isn't to erase their attachment styles, but to soften their edges enough to finally meet in the middle. Not as anxious and avoidant, but simply as two humans learning, clumsily and courageously, how to love each other well. Avoidantly attached individuals aren't broken. They're survivors. They built emotional fortresses for good reason, to protect hearts that learned too early that needing others was dangerous. But here's the truth those walls can't whisper back. Love was never the threat. It was the unmet need masquerading as one. The greatest act of courage for an avoidant isn't staying fiercely independent. It's loosening their grip on self-sufficiency just enough to let someone else's hands hold theirs. To realize that needing someone doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. That being wanted is nice, but being needed, in the messy, imperfect, I trust you with my softest parts way, is where real belonging begins. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about uncovering who you were before the world taught you to armor up. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, you're not alone. At Shao, marriage matters. We believe relationships thrive when we replace shame with understanding, one vulnerable conversation at a time. Subscribe for more insights on love, attachment, and breaking cycles. Comment below. Have you experienced this dance of closeness and distance? What helped you find balance? Because the best love stories aren't about perfect partners. They're about two people brave enough to grow together. Until next time, choose courage over armor.